Hi. In this movie, what I want to talk about is the draw inside feature of CS5. The if you've read the chapter on clipping masks, then I'm sure there's probably some questions going on in your mind about clipping masks. I know when I've used them in the past, they're somewhat confusing. So let me just walk through a clipping mask, just a standard clipping mask, and then we'll look at draw inside. So I've made two shapes with pumpkins here, and let me select the first shape here. If we want to put items inside of this using a standard clipping mask, like you might normally do, what we would have done in the past, we would have drawn the shapes out. So I'm going to just get out a brush, and let's see, with the brush tool here, let's scribble something up, and of course I need a brush selected. Alright, so let's pick a color here that goes with kind of this Halloween flavor. So what we would do is, and I need to undo, there we go. That's selected, sorry, going a little slow here tonight. There we go. So if we were going to use clipping masks in the past, what we would do is pick our brush color and then draw over the shape and maybe paint a little bit. Get the whole thing set up. Put in a couple highlights. We would select the object. We'd need to bring it to front. And then we would select both it and the objects that were going to be clipped. Go under Object, Clipping Mask, Make. Once we do that, the objects get put inside of that shape, but now we have to color the shape itself. The shape by default reverts to a fill and a stroke of none. So I'll go ahead and get out the eyedropper here and just sample the pumpkin color, and there we go. Now we've got this shape with the items clipped inside of it. Notice this shape that we selected is actually in front of the other shapes, but when we look at it inside of Illustrator, it looks like it's behind everything else. And that's one of the weird things about clipping masks. I think that's one reason why people find them to be kind of unintuitive, is that they look like the masking object is behind everything, but indeed the masking object's in front. Alright, so now let's talk about draw inside. So with draw inside, what you do is you select the object that you're going to draw inside on, and over inside of your tool palette, right down here underneath the fill or stroke of none, you just click this draw inside button, and you get this nice little rectangle indicating that it's kind of isolated here. I'm going to click away so that I'm not going to fiddle around with the edge at all. Okay, and then with my brush here, let me do a quick little test. That's not what I want. I want a color here. So let's pick a color. And I don't want a fill. Alright, so now with draw inside, I can come in with the brush, and as I click and drag with the brush, it automatically crops it. So I can do something that's a little more intuitive in terms of being able to make something that looks like it actually fits. And I might come over with my stroke now and make a brighter looking stroke. Let's come over and do some highlights. And so forth. So draw inside simply makes making a clipping mask a little simpler to use. Now, once you're done with it, you have to remember that you're kind of stuck in this mode. So you just click on the normal mode again, and here's that shape. And as I move it around, I have just a standard clipping mask. Notice that I have the same controls that I have with a regular clipping mask. Here's a regular clipping mask. Here's editing the clipping mask. Here's editing the contents. You can come in and fiddle around with those contents. Same thing with draw inside, one way or the other. By the way, I always notice this funky little thing. If I want to draw more inside, notice that it's kind of blanked out here to begin with. This is just kind of a funny thing. Click on the contents and then click back on editing the clipping mask, and now that button's selectable. You can choose that item, and then you can go ahead and continue to draw inside. And again, like with any clipping mask, the benefit is that you don't have to worry about having everything line up. I'm going to just draw some shapes, and it just gets completely clipped on the outside. And by the way, it is a clipping mask, so if I take another object that I've already been working on and it's a clipping mask, instead just click on its contents, click back on its shape, I can draw inside of it as well. So there's nothing special about draw inside in terms of you can do it for one kind of clipping mask but not the other. You can do it for either one. Just remember that you need to get out of it there. So that's the draw inside feature. By the way, if we look inside the layers palette, notice one thing I love about clipping masks with layers is that you can easily identify them. Notice as I open up the group, the clipping mask is always identified as being on top, and then there's other things in here too. And it's the same way in both of these cases. When you work with clipping masks, it always looks the same. If you ever want to add something to a clipping mask, let's say we want to add this brush stroke, and I want to actually put it into this clipping mask. What I would do is just drag it up. I think it's probably this bottom one, sorry. We'll take a guess. And just drag it up and drop it so it's underneath the clipping path. Oh, it's the wrong one. Sorry. I think we have to go the other way. Drag it up here. There we go. And you can easily add things to clipping items this way. It's a very simple way to work. So you can drag items in and out. If you ever need to just select just the clipping item, that's easy to do. You can also select individual paths if you need to do that. That's nice too. The other thing I've noticed about clipping paths with Illustrator, I think starting with CS4 actually, is that in the old days, if you wanted to edit things, you would just select the item and you could come along and you could actually grab the outside of the shape by dragging marquees. But notice how that becomes unusable. So that's kind of a drag. You can work on it in isolation mode. If I can get this, let me see if I can double click on it. So I'm isolating here. Let's go in here, and can I select this now? Yeah, so when I double clicked on that object to edit it, I can now drag marquees around and I can work with these things even though they're outside of the clipping mask. So double clicking is kind of what that's about. If you've used Flash before, you'll notice it's similar. So if I wanted to work on this, I'd go into isolation mode with it. Then I could click on individual objects and edit them just like I would normally. And then to come back out, I'm just going to click that little left arrow. So anyway, there's a quick overview of draw inside and maybe some features related to clipping masks that you haven't thought about before. All right.